Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
I've told you everything I know.
By myself, I don't want to be all by myself, but I have to be today. Welcome back to the Friendly Confines for another fine edition of the Claire-Vs-Carlson Show. There are many things you can put in your ears. This is one of them. Part of the Late Night Sports Radio Network, latenightsportsradio.com. She's Claire, not her, because she's getting some rhinoplasty. Mullins at the Claire Bear 23. I'm Andy Carlson at Andy Carlson Show. Purple for the win. Football convos, all the good stuff. We can be found on Twitter at Claire-Vs-Carlson, YouTube, iTunes, Facebook, and all the other crap. Hi, Claire. Oh, wait. Claire's not here today. And like I alluded to, Claire is getting some work done on the old schnauzerino. So she is not with us. Otherwise, she'd be sounding like,
oh my gosh, my name is Claire. Go Texans.
That's what she would sound like. So it's just me today, but we still have a fun, packed Friday happy hour of too much show. Too much show again. And yes, we do have to talk a little bit about the Patriots ball nonsense, even though everyone and their mother, including ABC, NBC, CBS, all the nightly news are talking about it. I think a Weather Channel did a little segment on it. I probably made that up, but it wouldn't be too far-fetched with it. But we'll touch on that real quick at the top of the show. My grandpa's favorite player goes on a little bit of a rant. I went on CNN. We'll talk about that. Marshawn Lynch won't talk, but has no problem grabbing his junk. Also, the Packers lose in delicious fashion. It was just a beautiful highlight for me. Reaction to recent head coaching and offensive coordinator and defense coordinator hires in the NFL. Speaking of which, one of them was not Doug Marrone. LOL, Doug Marrone. Andy Dalton is obviously a Pro Bowler. Hope Solo seems like a peach of a person. Kobe gone. Max Scherzer paid. And Mike Krzyzewski closes in on 1,000 wins. So that is all coming up on the solo edition of the Claire vs. Carlson Show, where it's just me. And usually in this spot, we talk about our weeks. And Claire, how was your week? Oh, I got nothing. All right. Mine was a pretty solid week. Tons of stuff with various podcasts. Purple for the win. We have our full off-season schedule lined up. But yeah, enough about all of that. Too much self-promotion, as I feel like I'm doing here. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, so that's why I sound a little bit like this. But we press on. And our first story is, I know, I'm sick of it too, but I just wanted to throw my 2 cents out here. The whole hashtag Deflategate. And even though the putting gate behind every single controversy, Benghazi Gate, Bounty Gate, seems so lazy ever since Watergate, and I don't know. I do like that Mike and Mike called it hashtag shrinkage. I think that's a little funny, a little homage to probably the best episode of Seinfeld ever. And there are so many just double entendres and dirty jokes going around with the balls and Tom Brady saying he has beautiful balls. And even though all of the fourth grade sophomoric humor jokes were out of the way within the first 5 minutes of this dropping, and now everyone's is just recycling forward, it gets you a little testy. You know what I mean? But the story, in case you've been living under a rock since it's on every television channel, 11 of the 12 Patriots footballs were found to be underinflated at halftime of the AFC Championship game versus the Colts, a game which they won 45-7. 11 of them were 2 pounds per square inch under the limits of 12.5 to 13.5 PSI that all NFL game balls must be at. The balls were removed at halftime, replaced with balls within those limits, and the theory is that if it's a lower PSI, the quarterback can get better grip. It's easier to catch, easier for running backs to hang on to the ball. But Tom Brady kind of made that moot as he actually played better in the second half, going 9 for 9 in the third quarter, 2 touchdowns with the replacement football. So that whole argument is a little moot. And Bill Belichick and Tom Brady each had respective press conferences on Thursday, doing a little explaining to do, even though Belichick went on an 8-minute diatribe where he basically said, nothing. I know nothing. And it was interesting because he did seem pretty open about it, but you could tell that it was all lawyer scrub. Like there were hashtag there will be lawyers in this thing. That was crafted, prepared, and canned. And when the reporters were asking follow-up questions, which, by the way, that Patriots press room was a madhouse. Because since this is a national story, all of the local people, like Peter Alexander, NBC Nightly News, I think was there, and pretty much everyone from every walk of life, Inside Edition, CBS Nightly News, blah, blah, blah. They were there, and it was really embarrassing how they were just shouting questions over each other. When it opened up for questions, it just sounded like it sounded like the floor of the stock exchange, just and no one got a question in edgeways. It reminded me of the Ray Rice situation where everyone, like Inside Edition, was just trying to throw out a controversial question, just throw it out there and then pull the pin instead of getting actual information. But anyways, when they open up to Belichick for questions, he continually dropped the, I've told you everything I know. I've told you everything I know. I've taken a page out of Marshawn Lynch's book, and it's probably actually pretty smart, even though the NFL moves like a glacier pace when they're doing investigations, and I'm sure this will hang over Super Bowl week 2, so Belichick better have that I've told you everything I know line cut and paste, because he's going to get peppered with tons of questions leading up to the Super Bowl, which is really unfortunate because we should be looking at this little football game that's coming up rather than this inflate gate. There, yeah, I do have to say it. Tom Brady said next to nothing as well, although he did not come out with lawyer scrub, and he answered every question that was presented to him in, I do believe, an honest fashion. Maybe a little rubish, a little, I know nothing, I see nothing, playing dumb a little bit, but you do have to give him credit for standing up there and taking all the tough questions, because he did seem uncomfortable with the questions, but he threw everything out there, and I believe him to a degree, even though every quarterback they can put in front of a camera on ESPN has been like, oh, I obviously like the balls in this fashion, and the week before, the ball guys, we would go through this whole process of making sure I'm comfortable with the football. And I do believe that Tom Brady does like his balls a certain way. And sorry, I ranted earlier about how all the sophomore jokes are out of the way, and then I dropped one of my own. But you know, we're all kind of fourth graders at heart. But him saying that he knew nothing about what was going on, and the balls were up to specifications when the referees inspected them, as they do for every game, and then they dropped those 2 PSIs on 11 of the balls before halftime. You got to think that Tom Brady will be in the loop on that. I don't buy the whole, it was a rogue equipment guy who decided to just let the air out of the ball because he thought that's what Tom likes. He had to know that's how Tom Brady likes his football, because he said that he does like it right at the edge of the limit, the bottom end, the 12.5, but these balls are coming in at 10, 10.5, and there had to be something at play here. But then again, they could be blaming this all on the weather. It was cold, it was damp, it was that type of weather in Foxborough. And, you know, in cold weather, and people here in Minnesota obviously know that in winter your tire air pressure will go down as the temperature goes down. And the NFL not inspecting the Colts footballs, which were obviously had to be up to spec before the game, they didn't inspect the Colts balls at halftime. They don't have a control group for this. So the Patriots could conceivably hide behind the theory that it was all weather related. You know, our footballs were deflated by halftime because it was so cold, so icy at Foxborough. And Yeah, the thing is about how the story leaked. Bob Kravitz, formerly Indianapolis Star and works on some sort of television station out there now, he broke the story, got a little bit of flack for it right away, but Chris Mortensen confirmed and the 11 out of 12 thing, and then we're off to the races on the story. But when I was thinking about it, you got to think, where did the story originate? It obviously did not start with the Patriots. It obviously did not start with the NFL because they were planning to investigate the Patriots because the Colts had brought this to their attention when they played in season earlier this year. But you got to think, this whole year of bad PR press, you have Ray Rice, Greg Hardy, Adrian Peterson, all that nonsense that happened earlier in the year, that 2 weeks before the biggest game of the year, they wouldn't want this story out. It's just more bad press that gets into the mainstream media. They wouldn't want that. So even though they have been more openly disclosing everything as far as punishment processes and even officiating, they would never put this out there because this is a bad look and overshadowing everything leading up to the most important game of the year. So you ask yourself, cui bono, who benefits? The Colts benefit. Because if the Colts putting us out there and even complained about it first in the middle of the season, leaking to possibly Bob Kravitz, and then having him put it out there and people running with it, it benefits them because it gives them cover to their fans and to the national media. It's like, oh, hey, this is why we got our butts kicked in the AFC title game 45-7. It's probably not the reason, as the Patriots probably could have played with the cinder block and still won by 2 touchdowns. And Dwayne Allen even came on Twitter and said something to the effect that Patriots were just a better team that day, and I truly believe that. But since it is the Patriots and they'll never get the benefit of the doubt because of Spygate, the Colts, we're not talking about how come they got blown out the last 3 times that they've played the Patriots. We're not talking about how they can't stop LeGarrette Blount, and in the regular season they couldn't stop something called Jonas Gray. And we're not talking about that. So I still put this on the Colts. Now, it might not have been the DeQuell Jackson interception. He noticed that it was flat, passed out to equipment guy, that whole thing. It might have come more from the top, but who knows? And do I think that Belichick knew something about deflated footballs, give the offense an advantage? Yes. Belichick is the most detail-oriented head coach in the NFL, maybe in history. I don't know. He's a football genius. He obviously knew. And if you believe that Bill Belichick would not know that his starting quarterback likes the air pressure of a football a certain way, you're ludicrous. That's not a rational thought, because Bill Belichick would know, because he studies and would get every single conceivable edge right up to the edge of within the rules, but within the rules. I think this one might have gone a little too far. I don't think he directly instructed the equipment guy to, hey, I want you a little bit of air out for this game. I also don't think this is the first time that they did it, because the first time you bend the rules at something is obviously not going to be the first time that you got caught. And it could have been like a wink, not implied thing, or, Belichick not directing but suggesting. Like, he had that head equipment guy in his office one day. He's like, Tom likes his football's a little bit deflated. And not directly instructing him to let air out of the ball, but then the equipment manager could pass it down to the ball boy. It's like, hey, why don't you give a little tss after the refs check the ball before the game, in that little 10-minute window that we have before the refs checking the ball and then out to the game. Who knows? Do I think Brady knows? Yes. How else would the equipment guy know that he likes them a little bit on the flat side? How would they not know that he would like them at 13.5 on the higher side? It's also alluded to several times in the past. Florio brought up a good point. In 2006, where Peyton Manning and Tom Brady successfully lobbied for the league to allow visiting teams to contribute footballs to the game on offense. Otherwise, before that, it was just the home teams providing all the footballs, and the quarterbacks would only get to touch them before kickoff and warm-ups. And maybe it's coincidence. 2006, home teams get to visiting teams get to bring in their own footballs, and then 2007 happened, that record-breaking year with the Patriots, the 18-1 year. I don't know, but I've spent too much time on this already. Punishment. Troy Aikman thinks that the Patriots' punishment should be more than the Saints were bound to gate. I don't buy that, as every team does manipulate the footballs in some fashion. Like the Vikings and the Panthers earlier this year in that Cole game at the bank got in trouble with the league because both teams were keeping the balls around the heaters, and that's a no-no. So that is technically breaking the rules, except that didn't really get a lot of play because I feel like it's one of those accepted facts that everyone kind of does it, even though it is technically against the law. Like I equate it to driving 60 miles an hour into 55. Does everyone do it? Yes. Is it illegal? Yes. Should you be punished if you're caught? Yes. Is that big of a deal? No. It's just like jaywalking, where it's kind of a dumb law, but it is against the law if you get caught doing it, and you can get punished accordingly. Now, I don't think Bill Belichick deserves to be punished or suspended for a full year like Sean Payton on Bountygate, because even with Bountygate, a lot of teams were doing the whole pay for performance type of thing, but this is much less malicious than that. This is not actually systematically trying to go out and injure players, and that was more of a public image thing. And I think there will be a punishment for it. I believe the rules state that it's like a $25,000 fine, but that ain't gonna happen, especially not for public opinion. I think the Patriots will get docked like a third-round draft pick, as fines mean nothing. Belichick got fined $500,000 for Spygate. Do you think he cared? Probably not. Suspension doesn't really make sense, but Colin Cowherd had an interesting take where a punishment for Belichick should be make him and the Patriots do Hard Knocks. That would be gorgeous. That would be beautiful. Even though Belichick did allow cameras in for that football life thing, when they followed him around for a full year, I think he would hate doing Hard Knocks, because that whole documentary aired a year afterwards, whereas Hard Knocks would air basically in real time. He wouldn't be down for that. But I don't know. It is just a shame that this is going to overshadow the entire Super Bowl coverage, as there's a lot of fun storylines, like the long snapper who came from an impoverished background to long snap in the Super Bowl. Those are the type of stories that you get during Super Bowl week, not this whole garbage. And unless the NFL concludes their investigation today, or if the Patriots throw some ball boy under the bus, it's gonna carry over into next week, and that's just a real shame. Even though I don't mind seeing Mark Brunell cry a couple times. That was hilarious. But we're up against it. Our first break of the solo Claire-Vs-Carlson Show. We'll be right back for segment 2 with a little bit of Fran Tartenton, what the hell is going on, Marshawn Lynch grabbing himself, Seahawks, the other team in the Super Bowl. Oh yeah, there's still a game going on. NFL coaching moves, LOL Doug Marrone, and some other non-football junk as well in the hopper. BRB, Claire-Vs-Carlson Show.
Hello?
For daily conversations with the players, coaches, and contributors that make this game great.
Regulators! Mount up! We're coming!
Football Convos. Visit footballconvos.com or visit us at iTunes.
And we're coming back for segment 2 of the solo Claire-Vs-Carlson Show. Actually, it's just versus Carlson today, I guess. As Claire, like we said, is out with the whole nose thing. Schnoz. Or, I didn't get the details quite right. It might have been an infected nose ring. Because Claire, I don't know if it comes over on audio, has it's not really a nose ring. It's one of those things that the Bulls have. Like, she takes this whole Houston Texans fandom a little bit too far, where she actually gets the hoop. I know this doesn't come over well on audio, but, the hoop in the middle of the nose, that little middle part, it's not like a little cute stud ring that, some 15-year-old girl will get on her quinceañera. No, this is like an actual full-on bull hoop that Claire has, and apparently got infected. At least that's the story that I'm going to relay today. These are all probably lies, but I don't know. Getting back to some real stories, and the first segment was basically all Deflategate. And I apologize, because every single news outlet, every single radio show, every single podcast is doing stuff about that. Just had to get my 2 cents out there. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it is overblown or overinflated, as it were, by the media, since it is the Patriots, and all the traditional news outlets are getting their teeth into a story, usually a week before the Super Bowl. And I don't know. It's just a shame that it's going to cover up and maybe even taint a full week of Super Bowl coverage and the game itself. But I do think if the Patriots do get a chance to run out the score and possibly put a beat down on Seattle, which is entirely possible, with Earl Thomas being banged up with that dislocated shoulder, Richard Sherman claiming he's okay after that elbow sprain, but we'll see. I think Belichick and Brady will be pissed off enough, and plus the Seahawks can't help themselves. Jeremy Lane chirping that Gronk is not elite, he's just okay. I mean, why you got to poke the bear, Jeremy Lane? Who are you anyways? And Jeremy Lane, nickel or dime cornerback. Don't talk about Rob Gronkowski like that. You got to think that the Patriots will be absolutely burning and aching with a chip on their shoulder and just completely come out, try and whoop some ass. And if they have an opportunity to run up the score, they'll put 70 up, just so there's no doubt at all who the better team was. But we'll see. Speaking of we'll see, my grandpa's favorite player was Fran Tartenton. Third-round pick out of Georgia in 1961 for the expansion Minnesota Vikings. Fran, still regarded as probably the greatest quarterback in franchise history, and afterwards had some success in business and also does some speaking. Known to go on a rant or two sometimes, not afraid to speak his mind, and he definitely did that on CNN. They had him on to talk about the Patriots Inflategate scandal, and he went a little bit off the beaten path, and here's what that sounded like.
Now, you want to hear a real story that everybody covers up for the last 20 years? Do you know what's epidemic? The team that their players take the most performance-enhancing drugs will win the game. These teams that are in the playoffs, and all the teams, they're taking performance-enhancing drugs, which makes their players, it's illegal, bigger, faster, stronger, and that's what wins football games. Deflating of football is nothing. But nobody wants to talk about the epidemic of performance-enhancing drugs throughout the National Football League that really changes the way the game is played.
Are you suggesting that the Patriots and perhaps other teams as well, if that's what you're suggesting,
every team
are winning, won the game, and much of it has to do with performance-enhancing drugs? Are you making that accusation on live television?
Yeah, no, I've been saying that for 5 years. Nobody wants to cover it. It's epidemic. If performance-enhancing drugs help Barry Bonds hit 70-plus home runs, McGuire 60s, and all the other stuff, and it's been epidemic in baseball and track and field. It's been epidemic in football.
And it kind of went on like that. Fran went a little bit off the rails, and eventually the CNN host, I didn't catch her name, eventually had to cut him off, as he was throwing around some pretty hefty accusations where he doesn't have any tangible proof in hand per se, but it is one of the worst-kept secrets that a lot of these NFL guys are jacked up on HGH, PEDs, and they are starting to get a little bit more serious on that, crack down on Adderall, crack down on diuretics, crack down on HGH, even though in exchange they're letting them smoke weed. But this is probably the true Inflategate. I mean, you're telling me that LaRon Landry, who was cracked earlier this year for PEDs, looks that normal through eating lots of spinach and doing push-ups? Probably not. And also you're explaining how these 350-pound defensive linemen can still run a 4.640. Okay. And I think he does have a point, but the thing is, when you're making an argument, it's all about the delivery. Like when Richard Sherman and Doug Baldwin did that stupid like vaudeville routine earlier in the year, he had some great points about. In fact, I don't even remember what the points were, but because the only thing that people remember is how they presented it in such a hokey, kooky fashion. And it's the same thing with Fran in this spot. He does make a good point about how PEDs are rampant in the NFL and give teams an unfair advantage, even though it is one of those deals, kind of like the Tour de France where everyone does it. It still doesn't make it right. And he has a good point there, but the only thing that people are going to remember is him going on a tirade, on a rant, on national television, and the host having to cut him off because he was throwing out accusations out there without any proof. Now, if he brought it up on like a Larry King type show in a calm manner, calm, educated manner with lots of facts to back up his statements, then we'd be talking about his statements rather than how he was just yelling and screaming on CNN. And I don't know. Sorry, Fran. I got to call you on this one. Wasn't the time or place. It wasn't the best method of delivery as well. Speaking of not the time and place, Marshawn Lynch was fined $20,000 this week for grabbing his deflated balls, as it were. Damn it, there's another joke. Anyways, he's grabbing himself on his touchdown run in the NFC Championship game. Third time he's done that this year, and they finally popped him for the fine. And the whole thing is, why you got to keep doing this, man? You are 30 years old. I think he's 30. You are a grown-ass man. Why you got to just keep doing obscene gestures like this in public? Yeah, a large segment of the population probably thinks it's funny. Personally, I think it's funny as well. But you have wives, you have kids watching this game, and the kids are going to go out in the yard and emulate this, right? Pee-wee football, high school football. Every time they score a touchdown, they're going to jump backwards, top the opponent, and grab themselves as they land in the end zone, right? That's not a good example. And you just got to grow up, man. You got to stop doing that. You don't have to go all Barry Sanders where you just hand the ball to the official, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to just grab your junk when you score. And, of course, $20,000 fine is nothing for Marshawn Lynch, as he was fined $100,000 for not speaking to the media throughout the year this season, and also most notably for not speaking at Super Bowl Media Week last year when the Seahawks were in the Super Bowl. So that will be a fun story coming up this year. And Marshawn Lynch this season has come up with various ways to deflect questions with the whole, yeah, thanks for asking. And he's an interesting person. You can tell that he's very intelligent, and you can tell that he doesn't like speaking to the media because of the way his words were twisted in the past, and college notably. I don't know, he's just an interesting cat, although that player should be forced to speak to the media, but if they do it, I know he has to do it, otherwise he gets fined. Just don't make a mockery out of it. Why are these media people wasting time on the offhand chance that he might say something interesting? No, this is the story now, and you got to move on to better stories, like how the Seahawks are back in the Super Bowl. Oh yeah, there's another team in the Super Bowl. Who knew? After they won the NFC title game 28-22 in overtime, Russell Wilson with a 39-yard dagger to Jermaine Kearse to walk off the Seahawks into the Super Bowl. And this is especially a great game for me because, as many of you know, I am a dyed-in-the-wool Minnesota Vikings fan, and watching the Packers lose in this excruciating fashion was it was a top 5 Vikings moment for me, and the Vikings weren't even on the field. And it might speak to me as a person, but there are many Vikings fans that are in the same boat as myself, and sometimes there's nothing better than watching your biggest rival just absolutely crap the bed and lose in excruciating fashion. I mean, you got to think that Packers fans get a kick out of when Vikings fans lose in that fashion, and whoever your favorite team is, you got to take a little pleasure when your biggest rival loses like this, right? Because the Packers were up 16-0 at halftime, blew that lead. Mike McCarthy twice decided to kick the field goal within the 1 yard line. No, not on, within the 1 yard line in the first half, instead of going for the gusto, instead of going for the end zone. And it cost him in the end. It was McCarthy was just scared to win, and he was coaching not to lose. And the thing is about that Green Bay defense is the first half they were balling out. They picked off Russell Wilson 4 times in that game, even though it should have been 6, looking at you, Clinton Dix. They eased off at the end. They went into the whole prevent mode. And Dom Capers, as much grief as I give him, called a pretty solid game early on. You know, Clay Matthews was playing great. Clinton Dix is playing awesome as well. They were controlling Lynch in the first half, and that's the key to beating Seattle. Yeah, controlling Marshawn Lynch, force Russell Wilson to beat you. He wasn't doing it early on. Actually, he wasn't doing it for most of the game, but then got hot late through 2 touchdowns, including the game winner. And, you know, Russell Wilson saying that, you know, God made him throw the 4 INTs to lead the comeback. I don't know about all that, but you got to respect the kid's toughness and resolve, the way he brought them back at the end, although this is the type of quarterback I think he is. Throughout most of the game, he can come up clutch when he needs to, but he is a guy who's, you know, if you force him to be in front of the pocket, he doesn't have a running game. I don't know if he can do that. I don't know if he can win like that. And if the Seahawks do end up winning the Super Bowl, actually win, lose, or draw, he is in line to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And I still don't believe he is the best quarterback in the NFL. Even though Andrew Luck got humbled the AFC title game, I'll still take Andrew Luck over Russell Wilson. But that's neither here nor there. And the Packers, back on the Packers, there was just so many times where if one play goes a different way, the Packers easily win. And I can't remember a game like that where there's any of like 5 or 6 plays that go the other way, the Packers easily win. Like, Clinton Dix missing that easy interception in the second half that could have sealed it. Morgan Burnett actually picking off Wilson for the 4th time and then ends up kneeling on the ball. Kneeling instead of trying to run for the end zone, which, yes, Julius Peppers did instruct him to go down. If Peppers would have turned around and blocked at all, I think Burnett walks into the end zone because Wilson would have been the only one who had an angle on him. And the game wasn't over. The game was not over by any stretch because the Packers decided to run the ball 3 straight times, did not get a first down, did not trust Aaron Rodgers to try and throw for a first down like they did in the Dallas game, and gave the ball back to Seattle. Lynch ended up scoring a touchdown to tie the game, and they also give up that YOLO 2-point conversion, and then, of course, Brandon Bostic botches the onside kick. He was supposed to block. He tried to be the hero, grab the ball. Jordan Nelson's in perfect position to cover up that onside kick. Nope. Goodbye. Bye, Felicia. And speaking of bye, Felicia, the whole Seahawks fans that left the game early and couldn't get back in, the whole photo of them watching through the glass doors on the television inside the concourse, that is gorgeous. That is gorgeous because I'm sure there are a ton of very hardcore Seattle Seahawks fans. I know Dana is one of them for sure, but there are so many bandwagon fans, and this was just a perfect encapsulation of this because you don't leave the conference title game. No matter what the score is, anything can happen, and you deserve to be out in the cold, literally. Well, not out in the cold because it's an outdoor stadium, but you deserve to be locked out of the game because you left early. Because you are just as bad as Miami Heat fans that left, was it Game 6 of the NBA Finals where Ray Allen hit that shot? And you deserve to be out. Bye. And I don't know. No one's talking about the Super Bowl, which is a shame. And with the whole Patriots being the villains again, it is kind of a shame that the Seahawks are like everyone's heroes now, because I don't know if they can handle more bandwagon fans, but it seems like they might. I don't know, but we'll see. I like Russell Wilson. I don't think he's an elite franchise quarterback. I think he does great with the running game and the defense that they give him, but you have to give him props for having the resolve after throwing 4 touchdowns to lead them all the way back and throw that game-winning touchdown in overtime. Gotta give him credit there. But I'm still rooting for the Patriots, even though they are the villain. I do not think that they knowingly cheated, but I guess we'll see. And we're up against the second break. We'll be back in segment 3 with NFL coaching shuffles, Doug Marrone, LOL, some Andy Dalton shade, and some other non-football stuff. Will be RB with just me on Claire-Vs-Carlson Show, episode 21. Purple for the Win podcast is your one-stop shop for the team you hate that you love. That's right, dedicated to the pain and pleasure that is the Minnesota Vikings. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube for our weekly and bi-weekly mediocrity. And, of course, there's always purpleftw.com. Because, you know, aside from nipple clamps and chains and whips, cheering for the Purple People Eaters is probably the most pleasurable pain you can experience on this planet. So come on in for the mediocre analysis and the more mediocre humor. PurpleFTW.com. That's right, PurpleFTW.com.
Straight cash, homie.
And we're back for the third period, as it were, of the Claire-Vs-Carlson Show, the solo that we can hear you. Hello, show. Claire is out, and what excuses I'm going to make up for this segment? Let's see, I did rhinoplasty, I did a nose infection, and Claire's missing. Like Gone Girl. Think about that. Now, who did she frame? I hope it wasn't me. But anyways, we got a little bit more football and a little bit of non-football stuff as well. First one, near and dear to Claire's heart, Gary Kubiak gets the job in Denver. This after Denver and John Fox decided to consciously uncouple. And Kubiak spent a year as the Ravens offensive coordinator, said he was not interested in head coaching jobs. That might be mostly because the Jets were calling. 61-64 as the Texans head coach, including a playoff win with T.J. Jerome Yates at quarterback. And, of course, ties to Denver, Elway's backup for a number of years, and also a longtime offense coordinator for Mike Shanahan and the Broncos, especially for those 2 Super Bowl runs. And, yeah, seemingly this is Elway's guy, completely catered to Gary Kubiak, turning over the reins. Peyton Manning is still a question mark if he's going to come back. Said that we'll get the answer after his physical, and I don't know. We'll see. John Elway. The 2 press conferences, the one where he announced that John Fox and the Broncos had decided to part ways, where he called John Fox John Elway, and also the Gary Kubiak introduction presser where Elway talked about 75% of the time. You can tell he's a little bit of a narcissist, and by a little bit, I mean a whole lot of it. I mean, if you're in a city, an organization where they've been fawning over you ever since 1983, basically you can do no wrong, and you're I was talking to James Marilet of Mile High Sports the other day, and they call him Teflon John because nothing sticks to him. He survived Tebow. He got Peyton Manning in Denver. He signed a whole bunch of high-priced free agents, DeMarcus Ware, T.J. Ward, Aqib Talib. His drafts haven't been that great, and now he's run off John Fox as a head coach, who's won 4 straight division championships. And you can't sneeze at that. Yes, they got woodshedded in the Super Bowl and then also had 2 playoff failures this year included, but you can't really argue with those type of results. And it just seems like it was a whole ego match going on. The Broncos definitely did not seem prepared for the divisional round matchup where the Colts beat them. They also lose Adam Gase, who's apparently the cat's meow when it comes to offensive coordinator. And there's even some talk about him getting a head coaching job. And everyone talks about Kubiak and his zone blocking, one-cut running game and how he's always had semi-mobile quarterbacks to work in his offense. But I think that's too cookie-cutter-esque because Joe Flacco is not the most mobile guy in the world, and the Ravens' offense was markedly improved over Jim Caldwell the year previously. And then people always talked about that with Norv Turner when he came up here in Minnesota, where Norv is, he needs a big vertical, stand in the pocket, vertical passing game threat at quarterback. But then we got Teddy Bridgewater, who's a lot of great things, but the first thing that comes to mind about Teddy Bridgewater would not be stand in the pocket, vertical passing quarterback. He's a lot of great things, but he's not that. And towards the end of the year, those two made it work. And I trust Gary Kubiak's offensive acumen enough to be able to handle working with Peyton Manning if he comes back. And especially since Peyton Manning runs his own offense anyways. And this is just going to benefit the Texans running game significantly. Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan, the whole Alandis Gary, Mike Anderson revolving doors of where it seems they could bring in anybody and rush for 1,000 yards behind that offensive line. And it continued in Houston where he turned undrafted free agent Arian Foster into a star. Got some decent production out of Ben Tate. And then the Ravens last year, Ray Rice, bye Felicia. And then Justin Forsett, like the 30-year-old has a coming out party and rushes for his best year of his career. So you got to think if you're Mike Anderson, Jawan Thompson, maybe even Ryan Hillman a little bit, you got to be looking forward to this. Monte Ball too, I guess, if he still remains in the mix. But we'll see. Even with all those high-price additions on defense, Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas are free agents. Who knows if they stick around? And Peyton ends up retiring. It's the Brock Osweiler show, baby. Or since it's Kubiak, you can bring Matt Schaub over from the Raiders, and suddenly this 4 straight division title team becomes a 4-win team, and they go 4-12 next year. So, bye, John Elway. Sorry. Now, speaking of the coordinator shuffle, a couple of notable hires in the NFL. Mark Trestman replaces Kubiak as the Ravens offensive coordinator. Of course, he was the Bears head coach for the previous 2 years. Definitely not a head coach, but is an offensive wizard of sorts. The quarterback whisperer, even though he couldn't quite get to Jay Cutler, even though I don't think Jay Cutler was that open to listening, I guess. And joining John Fox in Chicago is former Broncos offensive coordinator Adam Gase, follows him over to the Monsters of the Midway, and also Vic Fangio, defensive coordinator of the 49ers, coming over after he got passed over for the 49ers job by defensive line coach Jim Tomsula. Probably wouldn't be thrilled about working for your former understudy, your former subordinate. So he comes over to Chicago. I'm not really thrilled about this because John Fox, I gave him grief before. He's not really the best in-game adjuster. He's not really the best at managing the clock. But these 2 coordinators I really like, and I think Chicago might get a turnaround quick with these 2 guys in there, but we'll see. Kyle Shanahan in at offense coordinator in Atlanta, coming over from Cleveland. And Cleveland's actually kicking the tires on Mike Martz. Could you imagine? That'd be so funny. But it's basically a foregone conclusion that Dan Quinn, once the Seahawks wrap up the Super Bowl, will get the head job in Atlanta, and those 2 have been tied together. So it is one of those odd situations where offensive coordinator gets hired before the head coach. And I do think that the hiring process is a little unfair, where if a team has success, they're going to, and you're a coordinator on that team, teams have to wait to hire you. They can't tab you with the job while your team is still alive. So if you're good at your job and your team makes it to the Super Bowl, you could be hung out to dry for some of these jobs, because I feel like that's what happened in Buffalo. And they didn't want to wait for a Dan Quinn or an Adam Gase, as it were. So they just settled for Rex Ryan. They just grabbed him right away. And if you're a young coordinator, you're really put behind the 8 ball of sorts, because teams don't want to wait, because that could also hinder what sort of assistants you get, the quality of assistant position coaches, coordinators as well. And I think that's a little unfair. I know it would be a little hard-pressed to put this off completely until after the Super Bowl, but because of Senior Bowl is going on right now, you want your scouting department in those positions, and the Combine is coming up on February 17th. That's a bit of a time crunch, and you want your staff in place to start the offseason running. But it is a little unfair for these coordinators who are presumably doing a great job so that their teams goes deep in the playoffs, and sometimes they miss out on head coaching jobs. Someone else who missed out on a head coaching job is Doug Marrone, and sorry, I just need to LOL Doug Marrone. And a couple weeks ago, he decided to take his $4 million to walk away from the Bills job. Still had 2 years remaining on his contract after 2 seasons with Buffalo, leading to a 9-7 record this year. Recently, got a job as offensive line and associate head coach in Jacksonville. And this after reports had said that he had been the front runner for the Jets job and been tied to a number of other jobs as well, including the 49ers opening. But Dougie, you gambled and you lost. It happened. And I'm in the camp that thinks it was smart that he took the $4 million that he's going to get no matter what. There's no offset language in that amount from the Bills. But also, he still had 2 years left on his deal, so that's $8 million that he left on the table. And there's only 32 jobs. And this just adds to the reputation that seems to be following you, that you're tough to work with, a little bit of a diva, no one particularly likes working for you. And now, when you're interviewing, what owner or GM is going to want a guy who just walked out on his team? And the way that you walked out on them, letting your players know via mass text after the news broke in the media, come on. So, $4 million obviously is not a dummy, and actually props to his agent, whoever negotiated that deal. But I would be surprised if Doug Marrone gets another head coaching opportunity, because he already has baggage on him. He's not going to be cheap, and who is going to want to hire this guy? Who's going to want? How are coordinators and assistants going to come and work for this guy? How is he going to inspire them? I don't know. And speaking of uninspiring, I am just killing it with these transitions today without Claire. Andy Dalton makes it to the Pro Bowl as the 7th Pro Bowl alternate. Say that out loud. Say it with me. Andy Dalton is a Pro Bowler after leading the Bengals to yet another one and done. He's now 0 for 3 in his career. 3,398 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, 17 picks, 83.5 quarterback rating, and is a Pro Bowler. Even though the Pro Bowl means absolutely nothing since so many people drop out. It's not in Hawaii anymore. It doesn't have the prestige as it once did, if it did have any prestige, even though it's a flag football game. But still, that just doesn't sound right, does it? And it almost seems like the movie She's All That, where they take the ugly girl at the high school and then turn her into the prom queen as a larf, as just kind of a LOL thing. This seems like that. Because Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, is not a Pro Bowler. Not even close to approaching a Pro Bowl level quarterback. But, what else? That's part of the game. Tom Brady, Russell Wilson dropped out. Joe Flacco spending time with his pregnant wife. Can't fault him there. And a number of other quarterbacks dropped out because of injury, notably Aaron Rodgers. But it is what it is. Drop a cliche. Andy Dalton is in the Pro Bowl. And speaking of another is what it is, Hope Solo suspended for 30 days from the U.S. women's national soccer team after being arrested with her husband, Jeremy Stevens, in a DUI situation. And they was driving a U.S. women's national team van during the arrest, which just adds insult to injury. And this punishment was a long time coming. Hope Solo and her husband there's always been a cloud of scumminess following them around. And Solo was arrested and charged with 2 misdemeanor counts of a 4th-degree assault in June. Allegedly had struck her sister and also her nephew, but those were dismissed this past week. Who knows why? Maybe someone got a little paid off because one of the 3 has deals with Nike, Gatorade, and EA Sports that the other 2 do not. So you're not going to hurt the moneymaker. Maybe someone got paid off. Maybe something actually did not really happen. I don't know. But Hope still has those deals with Nike, with Gatorade, with EA Sports. And also, speaking of her husband, domestic assault charge against him in November 2012. When he was then boyfriend Jeremy Stevens, charges were subsequently dropped, and they were married the next day, November 13th. How quaint, how just delightful for those two. And I don't know. She just has this air of unlikability, and her husband as well. And she even dropped a "Don't you know who we are?" during the DUI arrest, which is hilarious. I think Jeremy Stevens, this 3rd DUI, at least 2nd. I know he had a couple as a player when he was playing for the Seahawks, but 30-day suspension when the World Cup is this summer seems like a major slap on the wrist. It seems like they had to give her something to know that her actions and the actions of people around her was not acceptable, but it just seems like a slap on the wrist. And they probably have a couple friendlies coming up, but it doesn't seem like a tangible suspension at all. It doesn't seem like anything that's going to really hurt her. And like I said, still has all of her endorsement deals, and I talk about that because Adrian and that whole domestic violence case, Nike dropped him like a bad habit, and it is surprising that, not to diminish women's soccer, but it is more of a peripheral sport, and someone with a longer rap sheet than Adrian, still gets to keep her deal, even though, yes, nothing formal was brought against her, and Adrian did, of course, plea out to the domestic violence charge, and I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a nice person, her and her husband as well, even though they do seem a little bit more likable than Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. Kimye. And bring out home with 2 stories about the, what's the sport called with the round orange ball and then the orange rim? You got to toss it at, what's that called? A basketball? A basketball? All right. But Kobe Bryant, torn rotator cuff, looks to be a season-ending injury. And in a year where the Lakers are on full tank mode, Kobe still has a couple years remaining on that monster contract he got for some reason. And I don't know, this coming off a torn Achilles last year, Lakers are now in absolute full tank mode. They're 12-31, 4th worst record in the NBA, only behind Philly, who's obviously been in tank mode, Knicks, who look like they're in tank mode, and my beloved Minnesota Timberwolves, who are probably trying. They're just really, really bad. Although Andrew Wiggins looks legit. But back on Kobe. These 2 season-ending injuries that they don't seem like freak injuries. They seem like old man injuries. The Achilles last year, and now the torn rotator cuff. And I don't know. This might be it for Kobe. I know that he'll probably come back next year just for the money. And he was a great player. He was probably one of my favorite players in the NBA. I followed the basketball a lot closer as a kid, rather as opposed to now, and even as a teenager. Him coming out and drafted by the Hornets, and I think he was on the Rosie O'Donnell show, or it might have been Oprah, where he was talking about going to prom with Brandy, and it was a cute story coming in, and young Kobe with the afro. Kobe with the afro. I loved his jump shot, and also those Adidas shoes. When he was first with Adidas, it wasn't always with Nike. But it was modeled after an Audi TT shoe. It was like white and clean lines, and it was just awesome looking shoes. Shoes I always wanted as a kid. Never got them. But, yeah, but he was a guy that when I was playing basketball as a kid, I looked up to. And then that whole rape allegation thing in Colorado, and then buying the wife a $4 million purple diamond to say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, that whole deal. I don't know. Kind of taints his reputation a little bit, but it's kind of like the whole Roethlisberger thing is if you have a pall of scumminess hanging over you, if you just win, that will all go away. And seemingly that's how things operate in this country, right, wrong, or otherwise. And the thing with Hope Solo, if she plays well during the World Cup and the United States wins again, this whole scumminess cloud goes away too. So that's Kobe, and this might be the end of a great career, and if so, I respect everything that you did on the floor, even though you're kind of a bad teammate. You ran off Shaq, even though you guys could have won several more championships together. You ran off Paul Gasol, even though you guys could have won several more championships as well. And you just don't seem like that great of a teammate, but you were a hell of a player. And I'll always remember when you dropped 81 on the Raptors with Smush Parker on the team. Smush Parker. And speaking of records, Mike Krzyzewski, Duke basketball head coach, is closing in on 1,000 wins and will have an opportunity to do so Sunday at Madison Square Garden against St. John's. Currently on 999 wins, going for 1K. And you got to respect what Coach Krzyzewski has done at Duke, before that at Army. And Duke was a joke of a basketball school before he got there, and now turned them into a perennial powerhouse. And you might not like their players. They might seem a little stuffy, a little haughty, a little arrogant, but you can't not like Coach K, right? And when I was following college basketball, it seems like everyone loved North Carolina. Dean Smith years. You had Anton Jamison, Maktar Njai. Yes, I dropped a Maktar Njai. Ed Cota. And I love those teams too, but Duke was bad. And I mean bad as a good back in the day. Like Trajan Langdon, Shane Battier, Elton Brand, those teams. They just destroyed people. And that I know lots of people don't like Duke because it's a private school and you tend to get more students, clientele there. But that home court, when they got the camera angle where it shows the Dukies like right on the floor, that is so awesome. I love that. And then players like, I'm just racking my brain now, Corey Maggette, Jay Williams, Chris Carrawell, J.J. Redick. I know that obviously no one likes him. Like the 17,000 Plumlee brothers, Jabari Parker, Austin Rivers. Who else? Grant Hill, obviously, Christian Laettner, Danny Ferry, I guess. And they had some great players and some great teams under Coach K. And love or hate Duke, please respect Coach K and the man himself. And especially what he's done with USA basketball as well. Got them to completely turn around since the 2004 embarrassment in Athens. And I really hope he does get 1K, a national stage Sunday, ESPN, St. John's, MSG, and no football this Sunday, so he'll have the big stage, and I hope he gets it done. He deserves it. And that's it. That is it for the Friday happy hour of the Claire-Vs-Carlson Show. No Claire, so it was just versus Carlson. And I hope it did okay. Mostly just talking to myself. And it's weird because I usually do this when I'm alone anyways. And sometimes there's not always a recording device on. But this is the conversations I usually have myself as I'm in my 8x8 concrete cell. In between time in the exercise yard, 1 hour. 1 hour out in the yard, 23 in the cell. It happens. But have a great weekend, everyone. Claire will be back next week. She only has 2 shows remaining. It's so sad. We'll have our Super Bowl preview, and hopefully we'll be actually talking about football, and this whole Patriots nonsense will be behind us. But we're out of here. I'm at Andy Carlson Show on Twitter. The show is at Claire-Vs-Carlson Show, latenightsportsradio.com. Have a great night. Thank you for listening, and have an awesome week. Bye-bye.
The music was created and produced by Deeb. To hear more of his tracks, check out soundcloud.com/Deeb.
In my opinion, that sucked.